Hey everybody, I hope you all had a fantastic Independence Day. We are in the 250th year of American independence, just 1 year away from America's big 250. So what was happening 250 years ago today in 1775? Well, not many people in the colonies were openly talking about independence. In fact, the people who were using the word American independence were on the British side, who were using it as a reason and justification for the force they were using to quell what the king in Britain had already proclaimed was an American rebellion. But in the colonies, things were not so clear-cut. Of course, you probably had many people in the Northeast, in Massachusetts, who had fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons already killed by the British, who were probably thinking that the British Empire had taken one line too far and they were ready for independence. But overall, people were not talking about independence yet. So at this point, what the Continental Congress wanted to do was still reach a negotiated settlement with Great Britain. And so they were preparing several documents together. One was a petition to the king in Britain. One was a document to be sent and published in Britain, again explaining why they were doing what they were doing and trying to drum up public support in Britain. Another was to the people in London, specifically the government in London, which had at that point been strong proponents of the American colonists. And one was a specific document that was passed on this day 250 years ago, the Declaration of the Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms. This was a document that Congress wanted the new General George Washington to take with him to Boston and proclaim to both the people there and the new Continental Army to explain why they were doing what they were doing. And there were two phenomenal figures who worked on this document. One was Thomas Jefferson. One was John Dickinson. And as history would tell this story, Thomas Jefferson at this point already was looking forward to independence and wanted to put in strong language as to why America needed to fight and why Britain was wrong. And John Dickinson, who was also the principal drafter of the Olive Petition to King George III, wanted to tone the language down and make sure we could get a rapprochement with Britain. But in fact, these were two people who were very smart, who knew their history, and who had already written extensively as to the American reasons for fighting Great Britain, all about America's liberties that had been encroached upon by the British over the past couple decades. And they both had their own writing styles, their own view of the conflict that they wanted to have to put place in this document. And so what ends up happening is we have a very strong document, a rather lengthy document, but a strong document justifying why Americans needed to take up arms, why what the British were doing was not only wrong, but tyrannical. And this would set up the conflict for the next year and prime us ultimately for independence. And so I think it's wise to reflect on those words in that document. And in fact, I think it's okay to pray the words in that document. Our cause is just. Our union is perfect. Our internal resources are great. With a humble confidence in the supreme and impartial judge and ruler of the universe, we devoutly implore his divine goodness to protect us.